easier for me to start opening up my knee and start stepping over her legs from here. Okay, because of the fact that from here, if she tries to start bridging into me and start heisting, because our legs are entangled, I have to wait for her to bring her leg out. Like my leg is still trapped between her legs to some degree. So it's a little bit harder for me to take my leg out. Whereas from here, the second she goes to start heisting in this position, as she goes to get up, it's much easier to start stepping over her legs because my leg is free. So it goes both ways. It is easier for her to pull her leg out because our legs aren't entangled, but it's easier for me to step over her opposite leg because our legs aren't entangled. So it's harder for me to keep her down, but it's easier for me to leg ride. Okay, so there's a trade-off here. All right. So without going into all the moves over again and just reteaching the same thing, we're just going to talk about the principal difference in these positions. Okay, and the first one is that it's much harder for me to keep her hips down because we don't have control of the leg. But because we don't have control of her leg, she also doesn't have control of our leg. And because she doesn't have control of our leg, it makes it much easier for us to step over her legs as she goes to heist, and makes leg riding, mount, back take, crossbody ride, and all those things much easier as she goes to come up. We can kind of place her hips between the knees and make everything a little bit easier for us as she goes to heist. All right, so what?
Who invited this title?
Long title here, but it'll make sense in a minute. All right, so let's talk about another thing which is a little bit different in positions like this, where it is much easier to elbow cut when my partner goes to heist. The reason it's easier to elbow cut is because there's no lower body connection. Okay, so when she goes to heist from a half guard position, and she goes to get out from here, because our bodies are connected at the lower body, it's a little bit harder for me to go into an elbow cut from this position as she goes to get up. When there's no connection down at the lower body, now I can just move my body away from her. So it's easier for me to move my body away as she goes to get up. So the elbow cut will be much easier. So as she goes to start getting up and heisting from this position, it's a relatively easy thing to go in and move my body away and go into an elbow cut, where now from here, we can start going in and controlling our partner with body locks, with tight waist, double legs, various different attacks from here. So it's easier for me to elbow cut as she gets up because I can move my body and hips away because there's no entanglement of the legs. Okay. Now, if she brings her knee to the inside, okay, so she has an over back grip, and she brings her knee inside here. When we're in a half guard, and her knee comes inside, okay, because of the fact that my leg is between her legs from here, it's a little bit easier usually to start dominating my partner's far hip from this position. Whether it be posting on the hip or whether it be just building height and going right to the far hip, because my leg is already between my partner's legs, it's usually a little bit easier to start cutting to the far hip here. When we're in side control and the leg comes in, okay, now when I go to start taking my knee across to the far hip from here, if she extends her right leg into my hip, a lot of times it's a little bit harder for me to start getting my knee to the far hip. Okay, so what I'll have to start doing from here is I'll have to start wedging the hip in place. All right. So now when she goes to start extending, I can wedge the hip in place with my right hand. If I just try to drive my knee forward, she can just extend the leg and back her hips away like this. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to pin that far hip in place and just wedge it in place like so. So now when I go to drive my knee in, if she goes to extend, I can use body weight to start pinning. And now from here we can go into situations where we can move into counter leg drags, like so. If she goes to start facing me, we can go into outside camping from here. There's a bunch of different chains that we can start looking at. The main thing is that because my leg isn't between my partner's legs, making it easy for me to get to the far hip, and it's outside here, it'll be harder because she can use her leg to interfere with the cross hip post, make it hard for me to get my knee to that far hip, okay? So when she goes to bring her knees in like so, it's gonna be hard. It'd be easier from here, it'd be harder from this position to start getting my knee across. So I'll either have to post on the hip, which a lot of times I can do, but if she has a strong overback and she's throwing my hands to the floor from here, it'll be hard to start getting my hand off the floor. So I just put my hand next to the hip here. So now I can start throwing my leg up and trying to get it to the far hip. But even so, it'll be a little bit more difficult from here. I'll have to do some leg pommeling sometimes. Like from here, it's difficult to get my leg across. She's blocking my knee. But from here, I can go over the leg. So I can pummel my knee over her ankle. And then I can go to the far hip. Okay, but it will be harder. You'll have to do some more intricate leg pommeling to start getting your knee to the far hip. Okay, it won't be harder, however, to start getting your left leg to the near hip and then to a cross hip, but it's the same position. Your legs, whether it's here and her knees in. Well, if my right leg's in the middle, it's the same thing as if my right leg's not in the middle. Here, okay? But this right leg here will definitely be more difficult. I'll have to play a leg pommeling game. If her leg is high from here, I can pin the hip and throw it in. If her leg is low towards my knee, now it's hard for me to get the leg in, but I can always come forward. As she goes to extend, I can pommel over, and then I can start beating her. So you can do leg pommels with your knee to get your knee to the far hip, but it will be definitely a little bit harder for you to get that knee to the far hip when your partner's escaping from side control versus when she's escaping from half guard. So just keep that in mind. All right, so one of the things that we can do, okay, our partner is always trying to get back to some form of guard. So one thing we can do is we can either bait our partner into locking half guard, or we can just step back into half guard, which will obviously put us back into a guard, but it will give us more control. So there's obviously a play between, do I want to stay in side control and try to flatten the guy out and stay past the legs, or do I want to move back into the legs with more control, but then have to repass to guard? So you can manage this as you go. But as your partner goes to set up into this over back grip from a side control, like so, one thing I can do from here is we can just go in and we can either start going into a shin pin where I physically just drive my knee right between her legs, like so. So now if she tries to heist from here, it's going to be difficult because I'm physically sitting on the legs from this position. And we can start playing right from here. Okay. Or what we can do is we can just step our leg up and we can just bait her to start going in, and she can either wrap me into half guard like so, or what I can do is when she moves into this position, I can just take my leg and I can just hook it inside and physically hook my partner's leg and hook it into a half guard. So I can bait her into half guard, I can step into half guard, or I can go into a shin pin where I just play from here. So now when she goes to heist from this position, it's not nearly as easy for her to do so. And I still have all of my options from here. Like if she does go to bridge towards me, we can still open up the knee and go to work and play right from there. So we always have the option to backtrack into half guard, where we can start slowing things down, enacting our Turks, and playing with a little bit more of a control-based game than a movement-based game from a side control. We don't have control over my partner's lower body. So how do we flatten our partner out without a Turk from here? You're going to really have to exaggerate this rotation where you're in a position like this. You want to start flattening her out. I'm going to immediately do my best to start taking my hand off the floor and start posting in my partner's hip and leg from here. Now I won't be able to always do this from this position, because obviously if she has her elbow up high by my shoulder line, it's gonna be a difficult thing to start getting my hands off the floor. But if I can, I'll always move into that position. If I see I can't do that, we're just taking an over back grip here, relatively low, so if she tries to heist, we can control the hips. And now we're just going to turn our hips right into her chest. So as she goes to stay up from here, we're just going to turn our hips towards our partner's hips, and we're just going to run a circle and put her back on the floor. So when she tries to stay up on her elbow, we just really start moving into positions where we can start putting her down on the floor. We can even, as we start to circle, one of my favorite things to do is as I start to get weight onto my left elbow, my right hand becomes weightless because I'm turning my hips from here. And now we can start putting hands on, or we can start lifting this leg and using that to start rotating and putting my partner down to her back. So we have to do more of an aggressive circling and turning when we don't have the Turk. When we have the Turk, we just kind of lift and play here. Whereas when we don't have a Turk, we kind of have to run a circle. She'll be trying to walk backwards, and as she goes to walk backwards, the whole thing is I want to post if I can, or lift if I can. The way that I do this is by really extreme turning my body into situations like so. So when she tries to stay up and start fighting, we can go in, and now we can play the game. We can start leg riding and go into all of our attacks right from there. All right, so another thing that we can look to start doing from here, because we're blading our body and because our legs aren't trapped inside of our partner's legs, one thing we can always threaten doing from here is as we go to start turning, like start taking that right hand off the floor from here, is we immediately can go and we can just start taking big steps over my partner's legs. Okay, if I'm in half guard from this position and she has my leg locked, I have to free the knee first, and it's kind of a time-based, like kind of labored long. It takes me a while to start stepping into 3/4 mount. But what I can do is I can start rotating. As she goes to fight, we just misdirect and we just step right over the leg like so. We just step right into a mounted position, whether it be just outright stepping over, or whether it be pulling my partner's legs towards me and then just going into more subtle leg riding positions, or just turning in situations like this and then just taking big steps. So what will happen is I'll try to start circling. I'll have a hard time knocking her down. Then we'll just step right over like so. And now from here, wherever she chooses to go, we can easily go in, make counters, and go into all of our attacks. So it's a lot easier to start stepping over from this position because my leg isn't trapped. All right, so now, one of the easiest things that we can do when our partner starts bringing their knee to the inside is just to go into an elbow cut. Because again, it's hard to get my knee to my partner's far hip from positions like this. And one of the easiest things to do, the second I see a knee coming to the inside, is immediately right from here, because she can't pull me in with the legs because there's no connection. An elbow cut is always the most conservative and the most basic option from here, right? When I'm in a half guard,